for today was going to be about, and is about, getting back into the series that I started last October, November, when I talked about the mind and spirit and soul. And we were going to go to the body, which is going to be in 2 parts. But since there's a smaller group of people, I can either do that and or wait till next week for that and share a story today with you about family, love, and connection. Which would you like?
About your family?
Yes.
Your visit? Yes,
Yeah.
do that.
Yes, let's do that.
Well, I want to say a couple things first.
Okay.
Ernest Holmes stated in his manuscript, The Holmes Papers, Ideas of Power. There is a power greater than we are, and we can use it. It is creative. It can do anything, and it responds to our belief in it. But our belief in it has to be a belief that it is now operating, and that it has always operated, and will always operate. Someone will say this calls for faith. Well, in truth, all life calls for faith. I personally thought the other day, if you and I had the same faith that an electrician has, we would be better metaphysicians. Religious people do not have the faith that scientists have. When scientists have demonstrated a principle in their life, there's no longer a question in their mind about the truth of it. When I think about this, I believe it's true. So the question is for us, why do we not demonstrate our principle with trust? There's so much around us that interferes with our ability to have that pure faith, to know that power that is God operating through us. And that's what we're praying or treating for, is being done right now. And we are grateful for it before it even occurs. We let statistics get in our way. We let our personal limitations get in the way. We let our beliefs about time get in the way. And we let past evidence get in the way, all of which is not true. I know this power works. I've used it, and still sometimes I find myself doubting. Fear comes up. And at those times I return to prayer and I pray for the faith that I need. I try to be in this very moment with God, knowing that this power works. I don't make it work, I let it work through me. And I remember that when the electrician flips a switch, there are all those occasions when the light doesn't come on. So we have to see whether the light bulb's burned out, the circuit is faulty, the power's off to the building, or it wasn't paid. Then we fix the problem and we flip the switch again. So, when I do not see the demonstration I expect, I remember to pray again and have faith that my prayer is effective. Sound good? So as I said in the beginning, which is, where is it? Anyway, I know that love is all there is, and the rest of it we made up. And it's, as it was said in the statement, it's places where I do not see the love that I could easily see the love. So some of you weren't here last week, and I'm going to start with the beginning of this. I have 2 sisters, or had 2 sisters. There were 3 of us that grew up in our family home. And as I've talked about before, how abusive it was, and it affected all of us. My middle sister had 2 daughters who are still alive, and they live in Denver, Shelley and Mindy. But she died from brain cancer. There was a lot of stuff that was going on in her body. And at the time I was doing work on myself, in fact, somebody asked me the other day when I was telling the story, they said, how did you end up being so normal compared to my sisters? Because I did the work on myself, but they didn't. So Janine passed away from a brain tumor that had started somewhere in her body and went up that way. Tina, my younger one, had 2 kids as well. One was Jason, her son, and the other one was Brittany, her daughter. And there was about 8 years of difference in age. And there was a lot of stuff left over from my mother, who took care of Jason for a while when his mom, my sister, was out traveling around, and she got into drugs, and there was a lot of problems in her life that took her away from her kids. So as a result, the state took them away. I was married at the time, and I asked the courts if we could adopt my nephew and niece, but they wouldn't let me do it because I lived in New Mexico and this was in Denver. And it was a whole different state, and they wouldn't let us do it. So I had to drive to Denver and take Jason up to outside of Colorado Springs for a foster home. And Brittany got adopted out. And so for all these years, Shelley and Mindy and I have been trying to find Brittany. And Jason, he went to this foster home in this town, and he did very good. I called him a lot, talked to him. He graduated from high school. Then he came home trying to look for a job, and he was very depressed, and he went to his grandma's where she was buried, and he committed suicide. So she's gone through a lot of issues with her children, my sister. And the drugs and everything else has affected her brain. She's in an assisted living home now because her memory is about 5 minutes worth of thinking about something and it disappears. So I talked to her a lot. She still remembers who I am. Anyway, all these years, and she kept thinking, where's Brittany at? I'd like to see Brittany. But she was still stuck in how Brittany looked when she was 2 years old and taken away. She couldn't grasp that she's gotten older. Anyway, all these years we've been looking for Brittany. Well, then about a month ago or 3 weeks ago, my youngest son in Minnesota called me and said, did I tell you that I did 23andMe, where you do a DNA test? And I said, no, I didn't know that. And he said, yeah, I did that for just checking things out. And I got this strange letter from this woman who's looking for her half-brother and her mother and father. And I said, is that Brittany? And he said, yes. It's like, oh my God. Send them right away, send a message back and tell her who I am and give her my phone number and tell her to call me. So she called me on that Sunday, which was Super Bowl Sunday, and we talked for over an hour and got connected. And it was so cool. And I said, we have to get together. I want you to come here so I could take you to see your mom. And I tell you, she's probably not going to remember you. And I explained what had gone on. But still, you could see her. And so she calls me the next day saying, my husband and I are coming out to see you in 2 weeks, which was last weekend. So here it is all set up. And I tell Shelley, Mindy, and they're all excited about it. And I'm excited. Well, God, I'm going to see my long-lost niece after all these years. And so I drove up to Denver on Friday. And I stopped for lunch, and at one point I texted Brittany and said, I don't know where you're at, but I find it interesting. I'm going northeast, and you're coming west, and we're going to meet together and see each other for the first time. So I got to my nieces, and we went out to dinner with her and her son and got things ready because they were late getting into Denver to like 9:30 or something. And so we got the house clean the next morning, and she came over, her and her husband, and I sat on a chair outside waiting for them to drive up. And they did. They drove up, and it took a few minutes, and Brittany got out of the car, and she's nice and tall like the rest of us, and good looking, and she walked up, and I gave her a hug, and I said, welcome home. And we just held each other for a while. So then I took her in the house, and Shelley and Mindy were standing there ready to introduce themselves, and they did, and we went and we sat down at this table, and so I'm here, Brittany's husband is over here, Mindy is here, Shelley's here, and Brittany's across from me. And I have to tell you, the whole morning session from 10:30 until about 12:30, when we decided to eat lunch, went like we'd been there our whole lives. It was so easy. We were showing pictures, started with my father, which is her grandfather, to let her know, which, by the way, my father was a catcher in the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, which as a kid growing up, I always thought that was the coolest thing. He was the one that hung upside down and caught people. So we showed her pictures of him in his outfit and how he did that. And Shelley kept getting the feel, I don't want to push too much on you. And Brittany's going, no, I want to know it all. Give it to me. So we had lunch together, and then Shelley and Mindy had to leave to go take her son somewhere. So I said, it's time to go see your mom. So we got in the car and we went to the assisted living home and went up to go see her in her room, but she was in the in the dining room eating. So we went down there, and she was sitting this way, so I got next to her, and she recognized me and said, hi, and I sat down next to her. And I said, I've told you that I'm bringing somebody to see you. I'm bringing your daughter. And she said, oh, her name is Brittany. Okay. So Brittany sat down. Brittany brought some flowers to give to her mom, brought some pictures to share that she had gone. What had happened was when she was adopted out, my mother wrote her a letter, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then she took lots of pictures and things that were given to her, and she didn't give them to her until she turned 21. She thought by that time maybe it'd be better for her to make decisions on her. And in fact, Brittany's been looking for us for the last 2 years. Anyway, so I introduced her to her mom, and they were talking, and they showed pictures, and she'd go, who is this? And Tina would go, well, that's me. This is Shelley, this is Mindy. And Brittany would go, who's the little one? And she said, I don't know. Well, it's me, Brittany, I'm your daughter. And Mom would say, oh, or her mom would say, oh, how nice to meet you, and put her hand out and greet her. You have pretty eyes. And they would talk for a little bit, and then she'd forget. And Brittany would show some more pictures, and I'd say, this is your daughter. Oh, hi, so nice to meet you. She went over that about 10 times. So it was kind of sad to feel it sometimes, but she's a joyful person, and she was just having fun. So then we took Brittany outside, took pictures with her and Tina, her mom, and then brought her back into her room, and she had brought the flowers up, and we brought a coat for her for my other 2 nieces. And then we went back home, and in the car I said, boy, you really did a good job in talking with her. And she said, well, I deal with people all the time. She works as a bartender at a casino. And so she sets parties up and talks with people. And she said, no, it was easy. She wasn't angry, she wasn't sad, she wasn't anything. She was just joyful to be here to connect with her. So we got back home, and then the rest of the afternoon we're handing out more pictures. And at one point I looked at Brittany, Shelley, and Mindy, and they looked like three sisters. They're all blonde hair, they're chatting with each other, talking with each other, I'm talking with her husband. And it felt like we'd been doing this for a long time. It was so comfortable, and there was so much love flowing around the family, and happy to have her back in our lives. And at one point, they had said something about that they didn't know who we were when they came out. You know, they were concerned about what if we were weird people. And I said, well, what if you got to the house and found out we were weird people, what would you have done? And he said, oh, we had a plan B. But we weren't weird. So we had dinner, and then we did more pictures and more talking, and then finally they went back to the hotel room. So they came back again the next morning, we sat down, talked again. Then we started talking about how we wanted to get together. And I invited them to come up for Thanksgiving because that's where I usually go, is to Shelley's and Mindy's. And I told my son I want him to come down. He's a cousin, he needs to get more in touch with them. And he was the one that got this all going. And Brittany was saying, I want to thank your son for putting that in there, because this is the third time I've looked and it finally hit a DNA thing and was able to see. I said, yeah, I've told him that already, but I'll tell him again. And then we had lunch, and then they wanted to get some Broncos stuff because she's a diehard Broncos fan, being originally from Colorado, or to go up to see the snow. So we all got ready, and we got in the car, and we went to go to the Broncos stadium, but they were closed. So we took them up in the mountains in the snow, and they took some pictures because they don't quite have that kind of snow in Missouri. But we were all just really connecting. The conversation was flowing easily. And on the way back, at one point, her husband was sitting behind me, and he said, what do you think about what's going on? And I said, I don't want you guys to leave. And they said, we don't either. And they had to leave because she was visiting her other uncle in Greeley, which is on her parents' side. Her, what? No, I'll talk about family. So the uncle belongs to her adopted parents. At one point during the day, she showed me a picture of her mother and father that adopted her, and they adopted 2 boys too. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? You need to tell your mom we're really grateful that they adopted you, because they got you out of the lifestyle that would have been very hard for you, as it was for the rest of us. And you can see what it was like for your mother and what's happened with her. And I'm really grateful that you're alive and that you're happy, and she's got 2 kids and she homeschools, and she's got a good husband that takes care of her. And so we just all gave each other great big hugs and said we'll get together maybe 4th of July. He wants us to go up because he likes to barbecue. We may be after Thanksgiving come in. And so there was so much love and there's so much family. And you're talking about going on a trip. I wish that for you. Huh?
To Minnesota, no less.
Oh, yeah? So anyway, I have my long-lost niece back in my life. And she has her cousins back in her life, and yeah. And I told her, I'm so grateful to have you here, and she said, I'm grateful to have you, and my family's expanded, and mine's expanded, and Shelley and Mindy and I, the next day after they left, we were talking about it, going, God, this was the coolest thing. So after all these years of looking for her, we finally found her, safe and sound and happy and joyful, and she's back in our life. So anyway, that's the story.
So be it.
Yes.
I think we ought to tone Brittany's name.
Okay, that would be nice. Brittany. Send it away, sweetheart. Okay, namaste. That's the end of